What's up, everybody? Jason Messer here, editor-in-chief of Cheat Code Central. Thanks for stopping by, checking out the stream. Big shout out to anybody in the chat or anybody watching this back in our feed later on. So today we're going to be doing a couple news items. We're going to be wrapping up some information that a lot of people are kind of aggravated about coming out of the Netflix camp, involving another price increase coming soon. After that, I'm also going to give you some Game of Thrones predictions for the end of this series. Now, we covered in our live stream, we did a reaction to the premiere, and I had assumed that that was actually going to be my only Game of Thrones content that I was going to do until the finale. But there is one more thing that I want to get out there just because I have some thoughts and some predictions, and everybody has their predictions and putting out ideas that they think is going to happen on the show. So I wanted to get a couple of my ideas out there too, and a couple of my thoughts, just in case on the off chance I'm right. I want to get it on the stream. So we're going to be doing that, and we'll see how it goes. So appreciate everybody stopping by. So let's dive right into it. So, are you about to Netflix and chill? Because if you are, you might want to check your bank account first. We have a situation on our hands with Netflix that is something not everybody is completely happy with, which is yet another price increase that is coming, I think, in the next month for anybody who currently has a Netflix subscription. It is the second jump, I think, this year. I think there was a small jump in January, and it's part of a longer rollout. I think they've actually increased their prices. This may be the third time in a year. I'm not sure, 100% sure, but I know the price, the monthly subscription price for the streaming service has slowly but surely started to creep up, and we're starting to see now regular price bumps in $1 and $2 increments happen on a fairly regular basis, and not a lot of people are real excited about that. Now, I would say the average person like myself realizes that Netflix is this expanding, growing media platform, and obviously they can't be price locked, and I wouldn't expect that. I always thought that I got a lot of value out of my original $6 and $7 subscription cost back in the day, and I'm an OG Netflix user. I go back to when it was just DVDs in the mail. So I always thought it was a good value, and when they started asking for like $1, $2 more, I'm like, yeah, okay, that's fine. You're expanding your service in relation to what additional, monthly costs are coming in, so that I'm fine with that. But now it's starting to get, it's starting to become fairly regular. As a matter of fact, I will read you an email that was sent to all Netflix subscribers, I think yesterday or the day before, where they basically roll out ahead of time the price increase. So let's actually take a look at that. So you see this here. I got this in my email, I think, yesterday. And I'll just go ahead and read it to you. It's from Netflix. It says, "More of what you like. Hi, Jason." Because, me and Netflix are on first name basis. We're tight like that. Dave's my homie. It says, "We hope you have been enjoying your Netflix membership. We are writing to let you know about an upcoming change. Your monthly price is increasing to $15.99 on Friday, May the 17th, 2019. So that is almost exactly 1 month from yesterday. Actually, it is 1 month from yesterday. Today's the 18th. And they say, why? Well, we are hard at work improving Netflix so that you can have even more great TV shows and movies to enjoy. Here's to watching what you want, when you want, where you want." And then it just goes on, talks about how, you can always change your plan and you can cancel at any time, and blah, blah, blah. So, obviously for some people, that might be a deal breaker. We're getting into a situation where the service now is for the higher end HD content. It's almost doubled in cost. But that's over about a 10-year period. So that's not too terrible, considering the current streaming landscape. The problem is, and I think what's worrying a lot of people is this going to start increasing exponentially? Okay, because it's $1 and $2 a shot every time they go up. It's $1 to $2 increments. And I personally, I think I probably have the biggest Netflix package there is. That's what she said. I think it's one of those situations where I think I have it on multiple devices and I have the 4K content. So not everybody is going to be at $16 a month. John in the chat said DVDs was the way to go. Paid $18 a month for the Ultra HD. Seems like a good value. Yeah, I mean, I remember that. That was my introduction to Netflix. I was one of those people that was getting 4 and 5 discs in the mail per week. I mean, I was blowing through a ridiculous amount of movies back in the day. And also, let's not forget, streaming absolutely is what killed the physical media rental industry. I even wore my OG Blockbuster shirt as kind of a shout out, a tribute to them. Fun fact, this is a vintage Blockbuster shirt from like the late 90s when I was a cashier at Blockbuster. So it's probably worth money. You can hit me up on Instagram if you want to buy that. I'm selling it. I don't have an Instagram. And I bought this at Meijer like 2 days ago, so I'm lying. But yeah, John, I totally remember the DVD in the mail situation. But now, the streaming, getting back to that, there's two problems with that. If you are enjoying the Netflix service and you're enjoying all this awesome content they are pushing out, you have to accept the fact that they are going to have to start charging more, because this money that they need to use or they need to acquire to push out this new original content, it doesn't fall out of the sky. And they can't do it if they're charging people $6 a month for their service. It's just not going to happen. I think I read that they have about an $8 to $10 million budget that they are pushing out just for original content. They are planning to make, I think they've already pulled in like $1 billion just from their service. But in addition to charging more for their service, I think they said that they're going to go in debt for they're going to borrow like another $1 billion on top of that to feed this machine, because they're going to continue trying to build it and expand upon it. And it's also one of those things where Netflix is now, because of their expansion, they're not just, as John was mentioning, they're not just a DVD by mail service. They're not just a digital streaming service. They're kind of they're a Hollywood competitor now. They have won Oscars for their content. It's becoming it's ridiculous now. It's gotten the attention of people in Hollywood, so much so that people like Steven Spielberg and others are actually pissed off that Netflix is even considered in the same category as traditional cinema. But it's legitimately competing. So you have to assume that these services are going to continue to rise. Tim in the chat says, what I don't understand is Netflix is a couple seasons behind other streaming sites. Yeah, that's kind of a pain in the sense that, I know what you mean. I've tried to watch some things on there that I was hoping was current, and it's not. I think one of the issues I ran into most recently with that, Tim, was the fact that I think it was Better Call Saul. I hadn't watched it originally at launch, and I wanted to get caught up on it, and I don't think the most current season was on it for a while. I think it was almost like you had to wait till the on-demand or the live version on cable finished its run, and then there was a grace period, and then it changed over to streaming. I would assume, Tim, the reason that is because the cable companies are probably striking a deal with some of these production houses to say, look, we don't want the stuff you're creating for us to show up on streaming at the same time or 2 days later. So you have to give us an exclusive window. That way people still stay on cable, because otherwise people would just cut cable altogether and they just go to streaming. So there's still a certain degree of needing cable TV right now if you want to stay current and live on stuff and watch it in real time. I'm assuming that has to do what you're talking about there in the seasons being behind. It probably has to do with that. But here's a situation. A lot of people are worried that the streaming service, because of the fact that they're pushing out so much big budget content now, that the monthly service is going to keep rising and rising, and it's going to become unreasonable or something that people don't feel like they want to pay for anymore. Now, the number one way that will you can counteract that is the fact that we need competition in the marketplace. Netflix for a long time was kind of the top of the mountain. They were the king of the mountain. They were it in the world of streaming. As more and more streaming services continue to roll out, you are going to see, obviously, competition, but you're going to see competitiveness in the marketplace. That is going to help halt that continuing rise of Netflix bumping and bumping and bumping their monthly service up and up and up. So eventually you will see kind of a cap as to where Netflix sees that they can't really reasonably charge any more for their service. Otherwise, they're going to start losing people. You might even see some of the packages go down, and they start providing maybe partial packages and limiting the service in order to give you cheaper monthly subscription costs. Now, while that may sound good, and saving money is always a good thing, I'm all for it, it's a double-edged sword. It's a classic be careful what you wish for scenario. Because having more streaming options in the marketplace, while it might make Netflix cheaper, and your Netflix and chill may be a little more affordable, it's going to actually open a huge can of worms. It's actually going to be a freaking nightmare for the streaming landscape. Because the more streaming options you have, the more subscriptions you have to pay for, and the more our content is just scattered amongst these different platforms. There has got to be, right now, there has to be at least 5 or 6 active streaming platforms, and then several currently in development that are on the way. I mean, just to rattle a couple of them off here. I mean, I know that you got Netflix, you got Hulu, you got Amazon Prime, you got Sling, which is not as popular, but people use it. You have YouTube wanting you to pay for content. You obviously have companies like HBO wanting they give you separate options. If you want to watch Game of Thrones and you don't have cable, you can get HBO Go, or it's either Go or Now. I can never remember which one of those it is. HBO Go, I think, is the one that comes with your cable service, and HBO Now is the one that you can get if you don't have cable, or it's reversed. I can't remember. Somebody can tell me in the chat. And then you have, obviously, Showtime does the same thing. They have a Halo series, the live action. We always wanted a Halo movie. It looks like we're not going to get a movie, we'll get a live action series. I think it's coming to Showtime, which means they're going to want you to have, if you want to watch Halo, you're going to have to get the Showtime subscription. I personally, I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I've been dying to see the new Star Trek series. I don't have CBS All Access, and it's exclusive on there. So that means that's another service that I have to get. Not to mention the fact that Apple has one that they're rolling out, and the big one, the huge one, is Disney. Disney has a streaming service for all of their content, which means all of their backlog of Disney movies, plus all the acquisitions that they've been buying up with, Lucasfilm, the Star Wars franchise, and the Marvel movies, and now Fox, and now you're going to have The Simpsons. I mean, it's ridiculous. Ridiculous. It is redonkulous. How can I, just a regular Joe who just wants to have access to content on the fly, on demand, I can't juggle this many subscription services, to say nothing of the fact that maybe I could afford all of them. I mean, maybe if they're all averaging $5-6 a piece, I mean, if I had, 5 or 6 different subscription services, and I just say, okay, look, I'm going to cancel my cable, and I'm going to take $40 a month or $50 a month, and I'm going to sink it into streaming services. I could probably do that, and that's not going to break the bank, but I don't want to do that. That's too much. It's getting complicated. It's getting messy, and that is kind of the problem that I don't think a lot of us anticipated. We were all about cutting cable. I know people like, me. I'd be the first one to tell you that I'm not completely happy with my cable service. There's a lot about it that annoys the crap out of me, but I still have it because it's convenient, and there's things on there there's a lot about it that makes my life easier. having 10 different streaming services does not make my life easier. That's getting crazy, and it's only going to get worse. And I don't see the solution. I don't think that there's ever going to be a universal streaming service. I don't think a lot of these companies that I just mentioned are ever going to get under the same banner. So I think it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get more splintered, and I really don't know what the landscape's going to look like. So you may see your monthly subscriptions for things like Netflix and other things continue to drop, but with that, in direct relation to that, you might see more services that you then have to sign up for. So it's kind of a pick your poison problem that we're in. It's also important to remember that the US only makes up about half, or maybe less than half, of Netflix's total streaming audience. You would think that we would be like the number one supporter, but we're not. We're actually about less than half. So it'll be interesting to see how the overseas market factors into that. Obviously, the infrastructure there is not the same as a company or as a country like the U.S. or Canada or Great Britain. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But unfortunately, I have to tell you, in the future, you may see a huge spike in just the sheer amount of streaming services we all have to juggle. And unfortunately, I think that's just the reality. Now, go turn the lights out and get back to your... Tim in the chat said, Animal House is another... actually, let me back up here. Up top, he said, what I don't understand is Netflix a couple seasons behind. Okay, so we talked about that. Animal House is another, but when looking to see who has it, Amazon has its subs and is a lot lower. So, Tim, are you saying that Animal House, like a show like Animal House or other shows like that, are you saying that Amazon is a little bit better in keeping up with the seasons? I'm not a huge TV person for Amazon. I'm usually mostly movies. So let me know about that. Steve in the chat said, Disney Plus streaming service is going to kick Netflix's butt. Yes and no. Obviously, they're going to pull anything that they still have on Netflix from the Marvel movies. I think most of the Marvel movies are gone, but I think they still have stuff like Thor Ragnarok and stuff like that on there. But yeah, you could absolutely tell that you were only going to be able to get Disney in one spot. They're not going to let anybody else have licensing anymore, I don't think. Or if they do, you're going to have to really pay for it. They're going to want you to get on that Disney service. Now, the thing is, because I have 2 kids and there's a lot of Disney content that I like, to say nothing of the fact that obviously Marvel and Star Wars, I mean, that's a given. But see, a lot of that stuff, if it's my favorite content, I already have it. I already own it on either DVD or Blu-ray, or I have digital copies or whatever the case may be. So I don't know that I'm going to go sign up for Netflix, or rather, I'm not going to sign up for the Disney service just to get that. They're going to have to bring something a little more exclusive to it. On the other hand, the fact that my kids are going to want to watch Disney stuff all the time, and instead of having to have all of the Disney movies, because you got like Lion King and Little Mermaid and a bunch of the classic Disney movies that we have that my kids actually really love. It would probably be easier for me to just be able to have the app on my smart TV and just put it on, and they can just go watch whatever they want, Moana, whatever the case may be. So I may end up getting it just for convenience. But as far as them beating Netflix, outside of, the sheer volume of what Netflix has, because don't forget, we're in a situation where the situation with Netflix is this. Even though they have a lot of really good original content, 99% of the reason, I would say most people, I know me personally, the reason why we sign up for Netflix is the fact that it's just convenience, and there is so much of the, if I'm looking for a movie that I know I've seen a million times, 9 times out of 10, before I rent it on Amazon Prime, before I do anything, I'm going to see if it's on Netflix. So it's just the sheer convenience of it, I think, is why they'll take they'll kind of eat Netflix's lunch a little bit, but I can't imagine there's not going to be too many people that's going to be jumping over and just canceling Netflix for Disney. So we're going to jump into our Game of Thrones content now. I am very excited about. This should be fun. Yeah, thanks to Tim, John, and Steve for checking out the chat. Appreciate it. Okay, so we have a huge final season of Game of Thrones to talk about. Now, we originally posted our reaction to the season premiere, and as I mentioned before, I hadn't really planned to do any more Game of Thrones content until the finale. But there is some things that I've been thinking about recently that I wanted to kind of float out there regarding theories and some things that, as I'm just watching the season kind of wind down and watching things unfold, I got to thinking about a couple theories. And everybody has a theory about Game of Thrones. I've read so many fan theories and I've heard so many ideas. And I thought I would bring to you what I consider to be the three main things I am predicting to happen this final season of Game of Thrones by the season finale. Now, I just want to put it out there. This is not spoilerish because I have no idea if any of this is remotely on point. This is not based on any theories I've read. As far as I know, this is an original thought. So if it does come through, it's not. If it does come true, it's not spoilerish. It's just me getting lucky. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you three things that I think could potentially happen by the end of the final season. I'm going to talk about who I think is going to live and die. I'm going to tell you who I think is going to end up on the Iron Throne. And then at the end, I'm going to throw in kind of a crazy little kind of what-if scenario at the end, which might be a little far-fetched, but you never know. And I think it's one of those things where if it does come true, even I'll be surprised. But it's not incredibly off the wall. It's not that impossible. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is the body count. And obviously Game of Thrones is known for having a big one. There are a couple people that I think it's very unlikely they're going to survive to the end of this show. A lot of people have been talking about the Hound versus the Mountain, that battle that's everybody wants to see take place and is hoping is going to take place. I would assume that everybody thinks the Hound is going to kill his brother. I would assume that's the case. I will tell you, it's very unlikely that both of them survive. So one or the other, and honestly, I'm not going to call that. I'm not sure, because I think it's just as likely that the Hound could get killed as the Mountain. So I'm not sure which one survives. I can tell you that both of them will not. There's no way. I think Theon is done. I think he's got to go out probably trying to redeem himself, maybe protecting Sansa, something along those lines. I think the two biggest ones that people are talking about are Jon and Daenerys. I think it's a safe bet to say that both of those characters are not going to make it. I will say one is going to, but you're not going to see both. It's very unlikely both of them make it out of this show alive. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say that I think it's actually going to be Jon. Not because I think Daenerys is going to end up on the Iron Throne, by the way. But with Jon, I think it's easy to knock him off because, first of all, obviously he's already died and then came back. The fact that they did that once, and then people aren't really going to be expecting it. I think most people assume that because they killed him off and then brought him back, they're not going to kill him again. So I think that in and of itself would be a kind of a swerve where people wouldn't see it coming. But the other thing is, Jon has kind of ran his course as a character. It's not to say he's a bad character, and it's not to say that I don't like him or he should go just because he's bad or anything like that. It's just he's did what he needed to do as a character. I think his complete story arc now is done. There's really nothing left for him to do. And I think if he were to die right at this point, it would be fine. There's nothing that's going to be left. There's going to be no loose ends from that particular death. Daenerys, on the other hand, here's why her not dying is even worse than death. Because this is a character who has craved power this entire series. She's somebody that has absolutely wanted the throne. She has worked the entire series to acquire this power and go after this thing that she wants so desperately. For her not to get that at this point, and in fact, for not only her not to get that, but to maybe see all of these people that have been depending on her, that look to her for protection, to where maybe she's not able to protect them. Maybe they get killed, or maybe they get enslaved. Maybe her dragons die. Maybe the Dothraki either abandon her, or maybe she gets enslaved again, because again, she was sold into slavery with the whole Khal Drogo situation. She was essentially, a slave. She was sold into slavery. What if she ends up basically back where she started? You assume she's going to, ascend to the rank of queen and rule. What if she ends up going in the opposite direction, where she ends up not achieving any of her goals and essentially being a complete and total failure? If she were here today, if she was a real person standing right here, I'm sure she would probably tell you that is a fate worse than death. So I would like to, not that I would like to see it, but if I did see that, it wouldn't surprise me. Because again, I think it's very unlikely that she's going to end up on the Iron Throne, just because it's too heavy-handed. It's too... Game of Thrones never goes down the path you think it's going to. It always throws you a swerve. And they've been building to that moment of her being on the throne for seasons. Like, I don't even know how many seasons now. So there's no way that that's how it ends, because that's not how anything ends in Game of Thrones. But if she's not going to end up on the Iron Throne, and I think everyone assumes that Cersei was never going to stay on the Iron Throne, that was always a temporary situation, that brings us to our second prediction. Who ends up on the Iron Throne? So I can tell you it's not going to be a Lannister. It's probably not going to be a Targaryen. It's probably not going to be anyone living at all. Because I think it's very likely, completely possible, that the Night King not only wins, but takes the throne. And when I say takes the throne, I mean he essentially conquers Westeros. I doubt that he has any interest in being on the throne himself. And here's why I say that. Okay, so they have been setting up the White Walkers as the threat in the world of Game of Thrones, like the most dangerous threat that exists. This ancient evil that's returned. They've been doing it since the first episode. If you remember, Ned Stark had to behead a member of the Night's Watch for abandoning his post. The reason he did that is because he got so scared after seeing a White Walker, and then of course, Ned Stark doesn't believe him, so he just figures he's a deserter. They started with episode 1, and each season the threat of the Night King and the White Walkers have gotten, it's grown and grown and grown. Now, I don't know how many of you have seen the original Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm sure a lot of you have, I'm sure. But if you haven't, there's this really funny scene where Indiana Jones is confronted by this really badass character who has this sword, and he's spinning it around, and he's doing all this crazy stuff, and he's going to fight Indy, and Indy literally just takes out his gun, and one shot, boom, kills him. It's like a 2-second scene. The guy is just done like that. If the Night King is beaten so easily, that would essentially be like getting knocked out in the first round by the first punch in a boxing match. How can they have built up this character and this threat for so long to have it not go anywhere, to have it mean absolutely nothing? The Night King takes over captures one of Daenerys' dragons and turns it. They destroy the wall. They're marching to Winterfell in the next episode. If all of that just goes away, what was the point? There was no point to any of it. If you go back and watch the series after that, you're just going to realize, well, nobody's going to care about the threat of the White Walkers because it didn't go anywhere. They were easily defeated, and that's it. Here's why I think that's not going to happen. For exactly that reason. They have to win. And I'm not just talking about at Winterfell. The Winterfell battle, I think, is going to be a prelude to the bigger battle, where the Night King has got to be victorious in some manner. It's the same situation with Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet. Imagine if they set up 10 years worth of movies in the Marvel movies leading to the battle with Thanos. And then Thanos didn't win. That would have been that would have been cutting the legs out from under that whole decades long worth of movies for it to just not go anywhere. So that's why it was so important for Thanos to win and do the snap and be victorious in his mission, because it justified, it validated all of that setup from the other Marvel films. That's exactly the situation we're in here with the Night King. He's got to win. He has to. There's no point to this show if he doesn't. So that's my prediction. The Night King takes it. Now, also, there is a little bit of a tease. If you go back into either season 2 or 3, I'm not sure what it is. If you remember, Daenerys does have a vision of the Iron Throne. But it's essentially the Red Keep that has been burned out and destroyed, and it's snowing, and it's all iced over. So is she seeing a vision of what's going to happen? Meaning that the Night King and the White Walkers are going to be victorious? Are they going to actually destroy Westeros and take over? To me, that's the only scenario that works. I don't know how else they could do it, but for my money, my money's on the Night King. But that brings us to the third prediction, because if the Night King wins, you can't leave the show like that, because that would be kind of a bummer. You can't do that. So how would they allow the Night King to win, but then also wrap up the show in a satisfying way? Because a lot of the actors that have already done interviews have said the show is going to end on a sad note, but a satisfying note. Meaning you're not going to be terribly happy with every aspect of the show, depending on which characters you like, but you'll be satisfied. It'll be a satisfying ending. So how do they allow the Night King to get a win, but then also get out of that to wrap up the show in a way that works? Well, here's my idea. There is a mechanic that they're using now more than ever in television series, not so much movies, but like in TV series between seasons, and sometimes even between episodes. They have started doing time jumps where one season, or even sometimes between 1 or 2 episodes, they will jump 5 years, 10 years ahead in order to shove the story along in a way to where they can they've either written themselves into a corner, or there's really nowhere else they can go, so they jump ahead in the timeline, and then it opens up new story possibilities. Is that what's going to happen in this season of Game of Thrones by the end? Could the Night King maybe get the win by, say, halfway through the series? Because I think there's only 6 episodes total. So by, say, episode 3 or 4, could it be a situation where he's victorious and then the last, say, 2 to 3 episodes is a time jump? Because we already know that the first 3 or 4 episodes are only an hour. They're actually less than an hour. I think they're like 58 minutes, 54 minutes. And then the last 2 or 3 episodes are an hour and a half or 80 minutes. Could those episodes take place years later, with the ruined kingdom of men finally coming together under one banner to then retake Westeros and fight back the Night King? Because another thing that accomplishes is the fact that Westeros is kind of a screwed up place to live. They call it the Seven Kingdoms, but the point is, just about every other house in this kingdom is corrupt. Nobody is really under one rule. If the Night King wins and kind of wipes all that out, it's kind of hitting the reset button. So the kingdom then has the opportunity, once they defeat the Night King and the White Walkers, to kind of reset and maybe come together under one kingdom with one king or one queen and actually exist in peace and in the right way. Now, is that going to happen? I don't know. I mean, it's one of those situations where I'm plucking this out of thin air based on where I see some of these story arcs going. I can tell you this. By the last few minutes of the season finale, and we will be live streaming, I'm sure, a reaction to the season finale. We'll be talking about that and doing some content. So definitely come back here and check that out. But I mean, I think that we have a little over a month before the season finale. I know this is one of those shows that, for me, it was always must-watch television. I haven't always been happy with the direction they've taken it in. I can tell you that I quit the show after season 1. I I completely quit the show because you'll hear this a lot. I was heartbroken when they took Ned Stark's head off because I love Sean Bean. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fans, and when I heard about Game of Thrones, I'm like, great, Sean Bean, Boromir as the king, that's awesome. I'll watch that all day long. And then he didn't even last the end of, I don't even think he lasted the whole first season, because if I remember, that wasn't even the season finale. That was probably like the second to last episode. So he didn't even last the whole first season. So yeah, I quit the show after that because I was pissed. But of course I came back, and I'm glad I did, because it was a great show. And regardless of whether or not any of these predictions come true, it's irrelevant. I love the show, as you do, I'm sure. And I can't wait to see how it plays out. It's going to be awesome either way. And with that, guys, I appreciate everybody stopping by and checking out the stream. It was fun. If you're watching this back later on, or later in the stream, if you've just joined us, we were just doing some news wrap-up, talked a little Netflix, and did some Game of Thrones predictions. So I encourage you, if you missed that, to go back and check out the stream. You can actually you'll be able to find that on our Facebook feed. So yeah, I appreciate everybody stopping by. Thanks again, and as always, we will catch you next time. See ya.